everyone, this is Daniel and welcome back to what will probably be the last part in this character creation tutorial series. So we have a few last tasks to do and a few things to wrap up. So let's just go over those last steps and hopefully finish off a nice character. A few things I did in the meantime, which you probably saw in the time lapses. I just changed a few things about the texture, like I didn't like the dark area I had here on the arms. I also made the eyebrows and this line here in a texture instead of a mesh. And I think from here onwards there's just a few more things that we need to take care of, like some of the artifacts that we have going on here. Then we still have to just fix this a little bit. I think I'll use a texture here instead as well. And finally just organize our scene a little bit better, delete the things that we don't need and clean up. So let's get started with all of that. First of all, to fix this issue I had to look into the way this parallax occlusion shader works quite a bit, and I figured out that in Blender, at least to my knowledge, it's quite difficult to set up anything that is not planar. So most use cases only allow you to really have this effect only on planar textures. I know that it is possible to do it in all directions. I mean, at least it is possible in Unreal Engine very easily with some of the utilities that they provide. But for now we're restricted to sort of one-directional effects, and that works out fairly well for the eyes here. But since this one is already tilted upwards in a way, it doesn't work out so well. But if you think about it, it's still a plane in itself. So all we need to do is to align it with its own object axis, and that should fix it. So I'll guide you quickly through the steps that I'll take to at least make it look good. It's a bit of a compromise, but still the best I can think of for now. I'm basically going to select this part of the mesh here, and the first thing I want to do is actually to make a copy of this. Just duplicate it like so, and I'll separate it into its own mesh basically. Then I'll select that new mesh that we have and just inflate it a little bit so that it's on top of the previous surface. You'll also notice that this effect on the side still doesn't disappear. The reason for that is basically that the shape of this isn't round here, it kind of goes back up, and that sort of destroys the normals and the direction of it. So just to clean it up a little bit, I'll select the outer loop here and delete it so that we're only left with this shape. And to make up for it, I'm just going to scale it up to be around the same size again. And finally, what we need to do is delete the solidify modifier since we don't need that anymore. And then on the previous mesh on the helmet, I go to the materials and delete the effect material. And then here I'll delete everything other than the effect material. So we are only left with the effect material now. We can scale this a little bit down as well until we see the outline nicely. But pretty much that should be what you want. Just make sure you don't have any strange intersections. So now the effect is already pretty good, but we can just fix the alignment a little bit if we want. And the way to do that is just to basically, well, I'll show you. Let's create a new object. I'll align that with the previous one. So I'll bring the cursor to selected on the helmet with Shift S, then select the plane and bring the selection to cursor like so. Then basically I want the front of the plane to be in the same direction as this. So I'll start with the top view and rotate it to sort of line up with this. And then maybe we'll go a bit further, something like so. Then I rotate by using the R shortcut and hit X twice to rotate along the local X axis, and then just align it until it really just points in the same direction as that. Now I can select this mesh, then the plane, and hit Ctrl J to join those two together. And all I need to do now is to delete the plane, and we should have now a more even effect. The only issue that I still see is that the direction is a little bit off. Well, one thing I want to try actually is if we should maybe just skip this step. Yeah, because I feel like this was giving us some artifacts and it already looks like it's behaving a bit more proper. And since the scale is also now a little bit off, I believe that we can just go in here and set this to something like minus 0.2 maybe. Let's see if that works better. We'll go a bit further here, minus 0.7 maybe. And that now behaves pretty good, I hope. We can just try to make the eye itself a little bit smaller. If I remember the correct place, it could be here. No, that's the highlights. Then it's going to be this one likely. Yeah, oh, well. So the setup makes it a little bit difficult to adjust that. I assume we now have to... So this is the color, we can make it a bit smaller here. Let's go to 0.6 on that. And then we have to fix the outline, which should be this one. Oh, that's the outer outline, then it's going to be this one. So yeah, we had to adjust a few of these elements, but I think the effect is now a little bit more stable. And you know, finally, I guess if the direction is wrong, which it kind of is a little bit, the only way to fix that is to rotate your UVs a little bit to go into the direct direction. So if we look from this angle, we want it to show up. So with this little adjustment, it should now be fairly accurate in all directions. So yeah, that's going to be it. It is not a perfect solution. I don't have currently the right tools and the knowledge to maybe do it perfectly, but maybe some of you know more about all this vector math and you can find a solution to that. I believe that in Unreal Engine though I'll have some more things to work with, so well, here's a little bit of a problem to solve left for you. Maybe you enjoy the challenge. We could just do some tuning still, like adjust the position of the highlight. I think like this should go a bit more here. That would look nice. So it looks a bit big. Actually, it's not too bad, but oh, that's this one. Where's the other one? Here it is. Okay, but that looks now very nice. And there we go. So that's solved. Now the other thing I want to fix is the eye itself, because this eye line is now still a mesh and it does not align from different angles because we use this offset trick on the eye. So the only choice we really have is to make this part of the texture. So I'm very quickly going to implement that here. So basically we start by selecting the eye. It's quite a mess, but all we need to do basically is to add an outline at the very end. So what I'll do is basically, so this is going to be our eye shape. We'll copy this setup first of all, because basically it will be in the same position as the eye shape itself. So I want to start sort of with the same transformation properties. This one goes to here. So once we have that, here we will want to insert a different texture, which we have to create now. So I'll go in here, create a new texture. Texture, I think 512 by 512 will be enough for this. I call that like eyeline maybe. And we hit OK. Now that is going to be just a black picture for now, but we can bring it up here. Eyeline, make sure this is set to linear, and we'll use that here to, with the color mix node, mix RGB, we drag that into the factor and set the lower color now to the outline color, which I hope we have somewhere here. It should be this color, which is the eye outline. So we just plug it in here, and now everything we paint on this texture in white should show up as a nice eyeline. So we'll now enter texture paint mode, make sure that we're on the eyeline, and from here on it's just going to be painting in a white color. So let's see if that works. So that works very nicely. Now I'll just take my pen and try to trace the eye shape nicely. Yeah, so we have one little problem, which is that this is all offset now. But I think what we can do here is, let's reset that to 0. Just remember the number. I'll copy it and set that to 0. That will reset that back. I'll also go ahead and hide this part for a moment. And then we'll also need to set this to 0 for a moment. Now there shouldn't be any sort of distortion on that particular part of the texture. So now I can go in and paint, and it comes up right there. Yeah, I also noticed that our alpha is being cut off there, but we can fix that in a second. So I'm going to paint this just to get things started. And I will have to add this to the alpha that we have. So I'll use another mix RGB node here, put that into this line, and set it to add. And then we'll add our line also to here with a factor of 1. That will just make it so that we actually have that in our alpha. Should we clamp that maybe? It looks like we have a little bit of an artifact. Maybe I should have created this texture with basically blank, because I imagine the alpha is going to be, yeah, the alpha is going to be full white. So what can we do here? Can I clear this picture maybe? So we go into texture paint. I believe we have a fill bucket here. Well, clearing it isn't really, I'm not too sure how to go about clearing, but well, let's just stick through that for now, and I'll see if I find a solution a bit later. I still have to look into the details. I'm a bit confused about some of the things I'm seeing, but I'm pretty sure there will be a solution for that. So I'm just going to continue now with my paintbrush and make the eye shape a bit thicker in the middle, then a bit thinner towards the end. You can go in and adjust that a little bit. Yeah, I think I found out what the issue with the line is first of all. Alright, and it took me a little bit to figure out what it was, but basically it was a clamping issue. You just want to check on this clamp value so that the values don't go beyond 1 or and such, and that will fix that little transparency issue that we had just here. So now it's just going to be finishing what we started. I'll try to get the shape a bit nicer if I can. It's a bit difficult to get a nice stroke done, especially while recording. This is usually something I do when I have time and the patience to do so. But let me just fix the little bump that we have here. It's a little bit better. Yeah, and if you want to remove a part again, you just set the color to black and you can sort of take away from that line. So I don't want to spend too much time. I think you get the idea, and I mean, I would spend some more time polishing it later maybe. Well, let's try it actually on a texture. Sometimes it is a bit hard to get the right stroke on that side. If you want to draw over here, all you need to do is switch to the image editor and make sure you're on the paint mode. Then you can very nicely draw here, and you can just confirm some settings like the stabilization. Maybe that's a bit too strong, hard to control because of that. And fine, let me go back to white maybe and try to just smooth this line out a little bit. And there we go. So I guess the texture leaves a little bit to wished for, but I mean, it's just a texture. It shouldn't be too hard to paint. So we also need to save the texture still, so let's just make sure we save that here. Make sure you don't forget that, otherwise you lose the texture. And now I think we can go back to the plane that we had this in as a mesh and just delete the upper parts so that we're just left with the mouth. And so yeah, finally the last thing is to just revert the settings. After all, we need here to set this back to 0.05 as we had it, and set the same setting to here. And now the eye should move all correctly, all in sync, and yeah, give you a pretty good result. So that is pretty much going to be it for our character. Just make sure you have all your textures saved as always. It's very important to make sure there's no little mark here which would indicate that it still isn't saved. So the last thing we really need to do now is to just organize our scene a little bit better. Oh, and there's one last thing I wanted to show you actually. You'll notice that if you zoom out, you sometimes get a very faint line down the center and along all UV seams. And the reason for that is that you have these black areas right next to where the texture ends basically. And so sometimes it will pick a color from outside here, and that will show up a little bit as an artifact. So to fix that, we don't really have a good tool in Blender, but I know one way to do that in Photoshop. Well, I had to look around a little bit, but I found this article on the Unity documentation. Maybe look for this header and you'll find it. And you'll find here in the setting up section a download link to an alpha utility, which you can download and import to Photoshop. And once you do that, you just open your texture in Photoshop and use that effect. I guess one thing you have to do first is select all the dark areas. So you set your tolerance to 0 in this Magic Wand tool, set anti-alias off, continuous off, and then just select all the black bars and delete them. That will perfectly clean all the parts that are there. And then all you do is you select this dilate tool and you go. Unfortunately, it does only a little bit, so you might have to do that many times. So I don't know, maybe this one does it stronger. We can try. So yeah, that has a strong effect. So I'm just selecting the lowest one all the time and hitting that a couple of times until we have a border that's really filling up most of the areas here. So we do that until it's all filled. It could end up with many layers. I hope you don't. You can merge this once in between and start over. Yeah, and we don't need to bother about the rest. It's not necessary to do it all. But now finally we're just going to flatten the image and basically just save it from here. So I'll save this. Now we go back to Blender. We have to re-import this image, which we can do if we just select something here and we go to the place where it's used here. We just open it one more time. And now you can see that the texture is updated and all these faint black lines are gone. So that's how you can fix that. Other tools like Substance Painter do that automatically, so it's not something you always need to do, but here it works pretty well for our needs. So yeah, I believe that was the last step that we had to take. Let's save that here, and I'm going to save this whole file now as a new version so that we can do some cleanup work without losing any progress. We won't be needing our textures for now anymore, so let's just join this together. Here we'll go back to our timeline, and now to deal with our objects, basically, well, this trash folder, we're just going to delete it now, since these are all objects that we don't need. Totally forgot about the cape, by the way. Well, we're not going to do the cape at this point anymore. To be honest, the tutorial has been going on for a very long time, and I have a few more plans with this character. There may be more of these series coming up in the future. I would like to touch rigging, and cloth would be a very interesting topic as well. So if I do a topic on how to set up cloth, I will do that setup there. It just feels like the tutorial has been going for longer than enough, and it's time to sort of bring it to an end. But let's see, anything else we can throw away? I'm pretty sure there are a few more things. We don't need these reference pictures. What else do we have here? So this is now the new plane. Let's be careful not to throw that away. Here's a copy of an eye that we don't need. here's this eye, here's that eye. We should name these things. So this is going to be the eye on the right side, and this is the eye on the left side. And here we have the helmet eye. I'm not sure what that is. And we're just going to move that into this collection, which we can rename to the name of the character. So finally, here are a few more objects that we haven't really looked at. So these are our old objects for the eyes, which we don't need anymore. This one we don't need either. This is the mouth. And are there any other objects that we don't need? Let's just stick to the correct naming convention. I guess I started everything with lowercase letters, so I'm going to stick to that. And it seems like now everything is as it should be. You now have a light source and a character, and it shades nicely, and I think it all looks pretty good. So there's definitely now more to do. I have to admit, we have to still do rigging. We have to look at ways to export this character to some application where it actually can be used. Like if you want to use this in a game engine, you'd want to bring this into Unreal Engine and things like that. There's a lot of setup with the eyes where you could make them blink and have lots of expressions. And so much more, honestly. I would also redo the hair, to be honest, and I talked about that a couple of times, but it's just a bit too much for this series. My goal was here to show people sort of the basic workflow and of character creation, and I feel like we have achieved that very well here. So let me just bring the character back into focus one more time here. So yeah, I will return to this series very likely. I might do a little bit of brush up in between, which is a bit beyond the scope of this series, but yeah. Potentially there will be a follow-up for rigging and for exporting to Unreal Engine to set up in-game, basically. And if I can find out enough about it, I would also like to do cloth in that context, but I still have to see, because I'm not I mean, it is a complicated task after all, and there are some things I'm not super sure about myself yet. But I hope you enjoyed what you learned here. I hope it was a very valuable experience for you. And if you have any opinions and, you know, suggestions and requests, leave them in the comments. I'll try to take a look every now and then, and I very much appreciate your time also looking at these videos for hours and hours. So I think I'll leave you there. I hope I didn't forget to mention anything. But otherwise, I'll see you soon. Hope you stick around, and I'll catch you in the next one.